It's the first that I heard of.
Who knew?
Who knew?
I had to go to the National Calendar Day to find that out today.
It's always fun. Well, I think it is 4 o'clock Eastern, so it is on the hour. So I believe we could go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for coming today. My name is Amy Kuntz. I am an instructional designer with Penn State's Teaching and Learning with Technology. I'm also an adjunct instructor coming up on my 19th year, both at Penn State and a community college in Eastern Pennsylvania called Northampton Community College. So part of this today stems both from my instructional designer role, creating a resource at Penn State, but then I've also used this tool to ensure that my courses are just the right fit as far as the time that students spend on it. And so this is too much or not enough quantifying the time students spend in engaging courses. The other element is I will be sharing a link towards the end of the session that will have the slides as well as all of additional resources for you to explore this in more depth. So, as far as our objectives for today, is to discuss the benefits and strategies for reviewing time spent on instructional activities within courses, to apply tools and resources to give an estimate of hours, and then to help talk about ways to integrate strategies for homework to avoid homework overload among students, and to also give talking points to have engaging conversations between you as an instructor and students with the concept of hours of instructional activity. And so, why is there even a need to quantify student time? Most higher education institutions kind of rely on what's called the Carnegie unit. And so, with that, it does differ between state regulations. But one of the biggest things is that parity of instruction. So, whether you're taking a course 100% in person, hybrid, maybe half in person and half online, remote synchronous through Zoom, or asynchronous online courses, a course is supposed to be a course, and the time spent on that is to be the same. And so at your institution, there might be local faculty senate policies of what that hours are, as well as your local state board of education could have different regulations. And so that is why it's so important to kind of capture and estimate the time that students spend on courses. So at Penn State, we've used this term for a decade or two that a course is a course is a course. So good teaching is good teaching no matter what the modality. So courses offered both in online and in person should be the same, as well as if you do a traditional 15-week term or a condensed 7-week term or a 6-week term, or even some institutions do 4-week semesters, the amount students spend on it should be the same. So if you're doing it for 15 weeks, it might be more like 9 hours a week. But then if it's more compressed, students need to spend a lot more time each week. And so that way, having quantifying that time helps show that it's going to be the same. It also kind of tangentially ensures that there's the same student learning outcomes and the number of contact hours. And this also is a requirement by the U.S. Department of Education and the Higher Learning Commission. And so if you're like, okay, well, that's great, but where is it? What I send to you later on will have not just the slides, but also some links. And so here it will be a guide with different links and things of that nature. So that will be available to you. So just to give you an example, at Penn State, we have a faculty senate policy that a student has to have 40 hours of work in order to gain 1 credit, and that includes class time as well as outside work. And it's supposed to be distributed so it's 1/3 of kind of formal instruction and two-thirds outside preparation. The local Pennsylvania State Department of Education has a little bit different, where it's 1 credit hour to 15 hours of instruction. And so that's about 45 hours of instruction. So sometimes it's less, but it's around that time mark for the local university versus the local government. And so for in-person activities, it's kind of easy. We are there for 50 minutes or for an hour and a half or 3 hours. And we could say, oh, okay, we see the students, they're here. We know what it is. Just like remote synchronous in Zoom, we can see if you're logged in, actively participating. So what's hard is the asynchronous instruction, whether it's students doing work in the learning management system or student work, whether it's reading, doing assignments off a computer screen, etc. And so one way to showcase this key is a traditional week typically might be 3 synchronous class sessions for 50 minutes and then an additional 6 hours of student work outside of class time. Whereas an online week, they still might have the same amount of homework or student work time, but instead of meeting synchronously with an instructor, they have asynchronous work for those 3 remaining hours. And so blended or hybrid, depending upon your institution and what it's called, is a mixture of that, where you still might meet, but maybe only 2 times instead of 3 times. And so it's all different probably for everyone here in attendance today, what you teach, what semester. And so that's kind of the key that we're doing, and how to quantify those unique times where you're not seeing those students. Um, and so this is just one example of taking the time and making it quantifiable in hours. And so weekly preparation time for a 3 credit class is usually around 9 hours a week. And so students, I teach a first year students typically. Sometimes it's students who might not have had might have graduated high school a decade or 2 decades ago. They don't they might not realize the time commitment for courses. And so it's really important to convey the time expectations for a course with your students. And so the challenge for all of us is how do we calculate the time? So again, synchronous is easy because we're all in the room. That asynchronous instruction is hard, and the hour of student work is hard. And so there are a lot of things and resources out there, and we're going to demo that next. And so just like the 3 bears, the classic of too much, too little, or just right, we try to strive for that just right. And so before I go over some of the tools that are available, in your experience, think about your students. Do students typically perceive the workload in your course as too much work, too little work, just right, or it really varies dependent upon the student? So I have a tool called Slido because I wasn't sure about polling. So if you go to slido.com and then add the code 2153536, you'll be able to answer this poll. So the code is 2153536. And I only have it so that it's one answer choice. So just pick one course. If you think it's different for your courses, just think of one course and answer it that way. So we'll give it about 10 more seconds. So again, if you go to slido.com and enter that number, you could go and vote. So 63% of you said varies depending upon the student, and then 38% did say too much. So yeah, so usually too much, but heard too little in the same class. It does happen. That's for sure. And so one of the benefits to reviewing the time spent on a course is the ones that we already mentioned. It ensures parity if we teach an online section versus in person, adherence to policies, but other ones include for ourselves. So when you move from online or in person and do hybrid, they have a tendency to be a little bit too much of a course and a half. It also helps balance the amount of instruction and guidance to students versus that hands-on preparation. It can address students' expectations, like Jennifer said, of some had too much or too little, getting that out there and kind of making a standard and conveying how much time is. And then it helps address comments. So one instructor I did this with, it was an upper level 400 level biology course, and some of his colleagues at his particular campus were a bit lenient. So then when they got to his course as a 400, he got really frustrated because students were complaining about time. He got bad performance reviews, and he was just preparing students who would try to apply for graduate school. And so he balanced, like, should I make it easier? Should I make sure the rigor is there so that it prepares students to go on to their future careers? And so by doing this and being transparent about the time commitment for a course, as well as the time for each assignment, we were able to address the workload and the difficulty, and it helps both prepare students as well as his performance evaluations and his rapport with students overall. And then also pace. So when we think about courses, and the pace at which we go through stuff, it can be challenging and getting that communicated to students. And so there are some strategies. You could kind of have students self-report of like, okay, well, how much time did you spend on this assignment? And that way you could use it in future semesters. You can also track students via data analytics through your learning management system and time spent on assignments. Or as an instructor, you can kind of estimate. We do have that expert blind spot. So we might say, oh, it'll only take them 30 minutes and it might take them 45. And so looking at literature that's out there for how much time it takes on reading or things of that nature can be helpful. And so some of this legwork has been done for you. There's a tool that we created at Penn State, and I know there's similar tools by Rice University and others, and it's called the Hours of Instructional Activity for undergraduate courses. And so if you wanted to explore while we go over it, I'll put that link in the chat. And um, basically, what we did was how do we convey this and have it be standard? So we looked at a lot of the literature that was out there, and seeing what was the equivalent. So this was created in 2018. It has now been revised 2 times already, just to make sure that everything is coherent and consistent. And so the time that it does for a blog entry includes reading and writing. How much a discussion board activity takes is about 1 hour. And then other things as far as reading and creating video projects are all listed here. And see, these are all research-backed estimates that we were able to create. And so one way to do this is to do a more detailed kind of spreadsheet and list out for every single week what do students do and how to do it. That does take some time. So we created another tool, which I'll share in a little bit, but I wanted to show. Okay, great. Thank you, Glenna. And so one example is for marketing. And so one of the things that they had to do was go through a voice thread and watch a video and then reply to everybody. And so I'm going to show you that example as a screenshot. And so for week one, in an Excel spreadsheet, it's the course, reading the course orientation is 3 minutes per page times 3 pages is 9 minutes or 0.15 hours. To do other readings and all of those, again, it's minutes per page times the number of pages, and then converting the minutes to hours. So you can see it's a very granular. And then there are some estimates, particularly for assignments, such as a self-check quiz is 1 hour. A discussion board is 1 hour. And you could see that the target is 7.61 out of 9 weeks. Now you might be saying, oh, this is not for me. That is way too time consuming. I don't have time for that. Hold on. We got feedback that some people want to do this, but then we created an estimator app. So that way it's low time commit for you to get a general feel of what is spent in your course. And so, before we go into that, um, and switch gears, I wanted to ask you all in that same Slido, which strategy do you currently use or would consider using to assess the time students spend on coursework? So if you lost it in the chat, it's on the screen, but it's slido.com and then enter code 2153536. So instructor estimation, student self-reporting, tracking student activity, data analytics, or other. And again, how I have it set up is just one answer choice. So just do what you would most commonly choose if you do multiple of these. So we'll give it about 10 more seconds. So 67% said instructor estimation, and then 33% said student self-reporting. So thank you all for those who participated. And so again, getting that feedback for some instructors, like the one that I said, he was like, I need to do something different. I'm going to spend the time and we'll do it line by line. But again, knowing that we're all being asked to do more with less, but we want to be good stewards. So how can we do this? So we created on that same website an estimator web app. And so this way it's quick and customizable as an overview of time estimates. It allows some visual feedback, and that way you can save it as well as share with others. So if you're one instructor, I teach an intro to technology course, and I want to share it with others who might teach the course almost the same, but a little bit different. That way they don't have to start from scratch and they can make modifications. And so I'm going to go to that same website. And so if you are on that one, just to show you where it is, it's under tools and examples. And then we have this hours of instructional activity app. If you want to go straight to there, I'll put the estimator link, which is in that resource guide, in here. And so this way you could easily estimate your students' instructional time as you as an instructor. So if you open up the app, I'm just going to do a quick little demo. And so we have it set to what Penn State standards are, but you could change it. So it's 15 weeks, 3 credits. But let's say your institution, you do 7 weeks accelerated courses. You could easily change that to any number that you wish. So I'm going to change it back to 15 and 3. And let's say for writing, I teach an online course. Each week they have to do a discussion activity, so 15, and they have to read and respond to others. Then I also have them, let me see. So the one question is, I assume I can also use the tool to estimate the course I will create for faculty development as a time commitment. Yes. So we've actually done that too. So we create online asynchronous courses for instructors. And so we've done that as well. So usually it might be 4 weeks, but then you just have to equate number of credit hours to that. So usually like 1 credit hour is 15 hours. So we like dump it down, and you could even do, if you're like, oh, well, I don't teach 15, it's going to be about 1.5 credits. You could put 1.5 credits in here. Great question. And so over on the right, you could see that discussion activities is writing. And so it on the pie chart, it has a lot of the brown. color scheme. And then once we do some of these others, it'll do there. So readings, we'll say assigned readings. The textbook is 250 pages. The we'll go down here for communication. Synchronous communication as, let's say that they have to 3 times meet 1 hour just as a check-in for a review. And then projects and hands-on learning, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So if it's listed, you don't have to do it. Um, and there is an other category. So if you're like, okay, well, none of these really fit, how do I do this? That is another way. So I'm just populating some of this just to show you. So let's say there's 3 group projects, 3 and 4 weeks per project, and they're medium based. And you can see every single time that I do this, it changes. So I wanted to do that on purpose just to show you that you could really see the overall. So if you're like, oh, well, that seems like a lot of projects and hands-on learning, maybe we'll bump it down to 2 projects. And you could see that pie chart go down a little bit. And then as far as assessments, let's say we'll have 15 quizzes and 30 minutes per each quiz. And 2, you can see that it again is updated. So over here on the right is that pie chart. And if you wanted to add more activities, you can also do it here. So if you're like, okay, well, I like discussion activities or I liked quizzes, but I don't want to have quizzes and tests all lumped in together. If you expand, add more activities, you could press online quizzes. And now if you go down here under assessment, now it has 2. So this will be really for quizzes, 1 quiz per week. And then this one we could have as tests that I have 3 tests and they're each 60 minutes. So we've been playing around. There was a programmer who helped create this, and they sometimes had this be bigger, but then some people got confused. Well, can I just focus on what's on the left? So they did make it smaller, but to me personally, I would probably expand this to just have it be more visual appearing. So that part is hidden, but you can add more activities by clicking that link. And then once you click on here, it'll put it in the respective categories on the left. And then if you scroll down here, you could see the pie chart that breaks down from writing to reading to communication to projects to assessments to other. And then you could switch from semester view to weekly view. So if you go down here to semester view, you could see that right now with the amount of stuff that we have an estimation of 44.5 hours or 2.97 per week. And we want the week, and we want that to be a little bit higher again with what we have here. And so it breaks it down into 2 types of activities. Instructional, where the instructor is kind of giving guidance, whether it's reading, whether it's lectures, things of that nature, and then learning activities, which is more group work, assessment, hands-on, and you could see that balance. And so if you could see, oh, well, learning is a lot more, maybe we switch out what types of things students are doing. But as far as the overall time commitment, that's what's down here. And so right now we have 125.5 hours out of the recommended 135 hours. And then I did see there was one other question, but I want to get to this too. If we're like, okay, well, I want to switch it to a weekly view, you could press weekly view, and then you could say, okay, overall, what is happening over here for weeks. So Glenna asks, will this estimate time for student study, or is this only considering the actual course time equivalency? So this is the actual course time equivalency. The research that was done out there, and even the spreadsheet, we had a big debate about this, because to me, study time is really important, and STEM students take a lot of time to study, and that should be quantified. But the research and literature was out there is that it's more learning and lecture, that studying might be that wiggle room, gray room that might be a little bit higher than the standard of the course. So for this and test taking, it doesn't quantify any study time. It doesn't take time into that at all. That being said, at least from my perspective, there are times where like, okay, well, I'm going to count study time. What does that mean? And so what I did is under assessment, I sometimes like did a separate one additional online quizzes and tests. And I said, okay, well, there's going to be 3 tests, and students are going to spend 60 minutes studying, hopefully, or 120 minutes studying, hopefully. Um, Again, this is your average student, so it's not perfect, especially when we do the estimator. And so you want to be mindful that some students take more time, or some students might go through things faster. Um, just as was mentioned, as far as Jennifer, of one student reported too much, but the other said too little. So that way it's, again, that middle ground. And the 2 hours, how do you present the 2 hours outside for 1 hour of instruction? So that's the difference of instructional activity is the in-class time. And the learning activity is technically out of class time. And I say that in quotes because many of us kind of do a flipped approach, or we have hands-on learning during class time. So it really is kind of a little bit fluid. Instructional is the instructor giving guidance, kind of not spoon feeding, but giving direction, clarification. And then the ELA, learning activities, is hands-on, students doing and contributing the most. Yeah, so like the homework. Perfect. Yes, exactly. And so, if you accidentally exit out of here, it will not save it for you. Because of it being a web-based tool without like storage server and potential information of courses. The way this was built is you could export the data. So if I export the data, it is a .txt file, and then you could email that to someone else. So what this looks like as the file, I'm going to stop share and actually share the TXT. It is not pretty at all. So it looks weird. So you would never tell a colleague, open up this file. You don't do it. But this is what's on the back end. And so let's say I share it with a colleague and I email them that file, or I accidentally get out of here and, oh no, everything's gone. What should I do? If you scroll down here and click import data, and then attach the file like you would to an email or to something you upload, it'll bring it in automatically. And that's how every information is saved. So that's how you export and import. And the last piece is, how do we take it out of here so it's visible to see later on? So if you click download PDF or print, I'm going to save it as a PDF just to show you. And then what that looks like um, on my screen, I'll just share my entire desktop just for simplicity's sake here really quickly. Is that this is what it looks like. So it's a PDF, it has the timestamp. And so that way it takes everything that you did here and has it for you. If you didn't use something, it'll have zeros. And then at the bottom is where it has that wonderful pie chart and other things. And then you can use the tool as is like that. But I'm one of those people who I don't like clutter. I try to get things away. So if you're like, okay, well, this is nice, but I don't like all those zeros, especially when I do the PDF, you can exit these out. So if you don't use the reflection or research paper, anything that you don't use, you could press a little X and it will clear it out for you. So um, you just have to be careful to make sure that you don't delete something that you want to keep. And then if you're like, oh no, I deleted that, but I wanted one of those activities, again, it's underneath that add more. And then if you click on it, it'll populate over here. So if I say, oh, I wanted scholarly readings, I got rid of it. You press scholarly readings and it's here. And this is the only other thing I wanted to clarify is assigned readings is more textbook based and has a different calculation of how many minutes per page, where scholarly is more research articles. It takes a little bit more cognitive demand. You might have to reread certain words or sentences, and so that one has a higher minute ratio for readings, and so that's why that's there. So that is the Estimator app. Is there any kind of questions? I know we had a few. But before I go back to the presentation, I wanted to pause. Okay, great. And so now that we know kind of the how-tos, either the more granular or the estimator, what are you going to do with this? And so there are a few things to do. The one is for you yourself, take your time and work on your courses. So you could do the more granular of the Excel spreadsheet, or you could use that estimator app. Then I would talk to a student and get some feedback, like maybe at the end of the semester saying, hey, I'm doing this estimator before I convey it to other students. What do you think? Does this make sense? And have it be that way. The other part is to get student feedback about the course. Maybe ask them on repeated assignments to say, how much time did you spend on this? On a mid-semester survey, see and have them estimate how many hours they spend on the course. Again, it should be about 9, but I always like to say like 6 to 7, 7 to 8, and see where students fall. And then have another question saying, how much do you think this has too much work in this course, not enough, or just right? And it's funny that sometimes the students who are saying, oh, it's too much, are the ones who report that they only do 6 hours of work. So that's always an interesting conversation. And then another way, an approach is to do assignment wrappers of how much time did they spend on this activity and having candid conversations. And so ways to make students more aware is to have a statement in the syllabus that has for this course to be in compliance with Pennsylvania policy number whatever, or even the Higher Ed Commission, it should be 9 hours a week in the course. So even a simple thing of a syllabus statement can help. You could take it one step further and have a syllabus quiz at the beginning of the semester that says, how many hours are you supposed to spend on this week? And so by them saying 9, it gets in their brain like, oh no, I need to be spending 9 hours a week in this course. And then to just have dialogues with that. So helping that be in the syllabus and the syllabus statement helps manage the disconnect and the perceptions of rigor and allowing students time to process it. Um, the other part that you can do is within your learning management system, when you list out the assignments, you can have a parentheses and have like the estimate 1 hour of work. So that way, if you've already done this, especially if you took the time to do the more granular approach, you already have that time commitment. And so you could copy and paste it. And so students know, okay, this time it will take a little bit more. Um, and again, in a perfect world, it would be 9 hours a week. But we know that some chapters are worth more or are harder, some chapters are easier. So it's okay that one week is 7 and the other week might be like 9.5. And so that I think is a nice way to do it. And then I know that Glenna had mentioned this, like how do we balance and make sure what's one versus the other? So even though it says instruction and outside prep, we've flipped the classroom and we've done active learning during synchronous class time. So try to make sure that we know what's gained and what's done in our courses, both synchronous and asynchronous. So ways to engage in conversations. I did talk about the syllabus statement with possible syllabus quiz, but there's some other ways to do this. One is to bring it up during class time, particularly if you're going to be approaching an exam or after the first exam and say, okay, for those students who got A's in an exam wrapper where we said how much time we spent in the course, they've been spending 9 hours a week in the course and they ended up with an A. But if you spent 6 hours in the course, you ended up with a D. So talk about it. Asynchronous, it could be part of an orientation module and call it out within your online learning orientation. And then during the course, have that feedback. And so it's out of a place of concern and helpfulness, um, either as the entirety of the whole class or individually with students about their grades. I know many of us have to have early intervention systems. And so by putting it in there, it makes them realize how much time is done. So yeah, Dr. Michael Como says, I do a sanity check at the beginning of week 3 of an 8-week course. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes teach a 7-week course. So it's like, okay, gotta get them early. Um, week 2, because it's here and over before you know it. And then towards the end of the semester, um, and to prep for future semesters, you might have an end of semester survey with a discussion about rigor. And that way you could also use it to improve your future courses. And Michael followed up with, I asked students, what do you need from me more of, less of? Yes. Yeah. So before we do this poll, Jennifer also says, I love this. The only problem in community college settings are an increasing disparities in writing preparedness and college readiness. Yes. So I find that myself, it's kind of that reverse bell curve that you have a whole bunch of A's and unfortunately a whole bunch of F's. So how do we kind of get them that are failing or D's to get them up, down and up, and have them be B's or C's? And so I don't teach writing, but I think depending upon your institution, if they have a college readiness course, I teach a technology course. So some students don't even know how to download files and upload them. And so even though it might be mundane, I do put resources out there for students to learn those skills, because it's above the baseline that's required for my intro to technology course. Um, the other part is working with your local advising. And so if they're willing to say, okay, well, what's needed for courses is to make partnerships with them. And that's been helpful too. All great comments and feedback. I love it. Thank you so much. And so our last poll is, I'll put again Slido in here, is how well do you think students in your courses understand the expected time commitment of each activity? Not very well, very well, not at all, somewhat. So again, slido.com and then 2153536. So we'll give it about 10 more seconds. So 60% or 67% said not very well, and 33% said not at all. And so this kind of goes back to what Jennifer said about the disparity of preparedness or even understanding. And so while I don't teach a first year seminar course anymore, I still put some of those strategies of, yes, maybe you came straight from high school to college, but it's kind of relating it to certain things like sports. If you were playing in high school and you're going to the pros, are you going to work out the same or more? Are you going to do drills the same or more? But then also knowing that everyone is into sports, come up with other analogies depending upon your student demographics and what their interests are. And so another comment from Dr. Michael Como said, students hear the expected time from their advisors, but to me, do not realize the hours until they are in the midst of the course. Yeah. And so too, that's the biggest thing, especially with students within my courses. Oftentimes they're working 40 hours a week and taking 3 or 4 courses and might have a child at home. And so it's kind of too late, even though they were given these warnings. So how can we put parameters and have it be a learning experience and try to get them through this part? And some of that is that flexibility of what of deadlines and what can be done and what you're comfortable with to make those accommodations. So thank you all for all your wonderful comments and suggestions and questions. So to kind of get towards the end, as we only have 8 minutes left, is the syllabus statement. So I mentioned the syllabus statement, but I wanted to have it be there as a resource for you. So this is for a hybrid course. Sometimes that's even harder. And so here's an example that you could have and adapt is that for a 3 credit course, what does this mean? And then for hybrid, it also can be that flipped element and making sure that they know that this means that you'll have the equivalent instruction by having online lectures, quizzes, and assessments. That a hybrid course is not easier because we meet less time. It is the same. And so putting it in more common terminology with that second kind of paragraph makes it relatable to students. So some tips and practice is to take it a course at a time. So pick one course, focus on that with the estimator, and then make adjustments. Then focus on the added value to both you and your students, and then talk to your students about it. So when discussing with students, provide kind of clear examples of maybe if you went through this and you realize, oh, I thought it took this amount, but it really took this, or the opposite, to have it be a conversational point for you all. So I wanted to make sure that we had 5 minutes for Q&A at the end. So I want to thank you all. But I do, again, have all of the slides and resources in this link. And just to quickly show you what it is. So we have the slides, we have the document for links, and then this is the Higher Learning Commission in case they would take it off of the website. That way it is here for you. And then I have a scenario in case you wanted to practice this and have it be low stakes. So here is a very brief kind of 1 week scenario. And then what does it look like if you did that more granular approach? And so this is just to show you so that way you have access to the content and to what it is, knowing that that marketing example on the internet, you can't see the course. So I wanted to provide that as an additional resource to you all. So with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions or comments.
Amy, this is Mike Comos.
Hi.
I wanted to thank you for the presentation because for me, it gives me more insights about how can I think about ensuring as much as possible students commit to the work they need to commit to in whatever course they're taking. I teach in a graduate school, and a lot of students don't even read the textbook. They come to class and are expected to be taught,
Yeah.
which drives me insane.
Yeah.
So this presentation and the tools you provided really provide some great insights for me. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment. And two, I think that's kind of the again another misnomer. Students are how K through 12, and I have great friends teaching there doing what they can. That they if you come into the classroom and you sit, you get all your information and grading and that's it. And that's not what higher education is. And so making those adjustments, and this is a tool to help make some of those adjustments. And thank you for the comment about sometimes it can be hard to know what to remove or adapt if it's taught by someone else. Yeah, so this helps you do that a little bit. Um, so thank you all. I know that sometimes people don't want to ask questions during a recording. So if it's okay with my moderator, we'll pause, but I'll still stick around afterwards. So thank you, everyone.